all Giant Gonzalez had was giant.
It's the golden age of WWE. Larger than life of fantasy. Step in the ring, feel history. Welcome to the golden WWE.
From Giant Gonzalez's furry suit to Yokozuna win the Royal Rumble, we're talking about the 1993 Royal Rumble. How you doing today?
I'm very upset with you today, actually.
Oh, why?
You made me watch this. It may have been one of the worst. Overall, I will just say for the Rumble itself, some of the matches were okay, but there's a lot of backstory to it. So that's going to be fun talking about. So let's get to it.
All right. This Royal Rumble you brought up already. Let's get into the match itself because the turnover is insane. So the wrestlers in 92 were missing about 50% of the wrestlers from 92 to 93. When we get to 93 to 94, we're missing 60% of the wrestlers. Talk about turnover. Like, clearly, you're almost out of the company too. A lot of wrestlers are going to be leaving soon. Like, the turnover, it's no longer this Golden Palace moment anymore. It's more just, hey, we're doing this, right?
Hanging on is what we're doing. This was not. I just had to think about people in the crowd going, "Who? He's in this?" When the buzzer would go off, Max Moon. What? This was not a who's who. It was a who's not. Basically, was kind of what it came down to. But it was a period of time, as we've talked about, where the company was really struggling in a lot of ways, roster-wise. A lot of guys the exodus was on, and it really is amazing when you look at this list of guys that appeared, and within a few months, many of them would be gone. And so it really just was a very good example of what was going on in the company, and all you had to really do was just watch this thing. You're waiting and waiting for somebody that was somewhere halfway up the card that would come out and participate in this thing. Of course, we start. One of the big indicators is you see somebody like Bob Backlund is back. 43 years old, I think he was at the time. Quite the physical specimen still, but come on. It was Howdy Doody comes back into professional wrestling, and everybody, was anyone excited?
How is this the new generation?
Yeah. And let's bring Grandpa too. And 43 too. Like, remember when we mentioned that it's funny that back then, man, a guy that was still in the ring and after 40, you're like, what the hell? Boy, he must be in really, really bad financial straits, or, he must have pictures of Vince doing something, or, how in the world we knew, like, he was pushing these guys in, like Randy was suddenly too old to be in the ring. And so it's really amazing. And then, of course, Ric Flair was still around. So you start with, that's your big star power to kick this thing off with Bob Backlund and Ric Flair. Like, okay, here we go.
Here we go. Yeah. You bring up a really good point. It's like last year, 92 Rumble, Ric Flair, like, whoa, it's Ric Flair. Can he do it? Yeah. And then 93, like, oh, it's Ric Flair. Can he do it? Like the feeling just completely changes. Ric Flair is number one. Bob Backlund is number two. So, and
I think like Backlund lasts an incredibly long time.
Over an hour and 1 minute.
So maybe, I don't know. It made no sense. If here you're hoping to push youth and the new generation, and you're showing, you bring this guy back, and then you let him stay in there for over an hour. What are you showing? That, these older veterans can still go and really go. Yeah. It's just against everything that you're trying to do promotion wise, and what you're trying to do with with the lineup here. It was just, I always used to think of these as it was the throw the stuff on the wall and let's see what yeah, that'll work. All right, move on. Let's go. Who's next? This one was a clear example of like, what the hell?
Now, what's funny is this is the first Royal Rumble I watched on television. Before that, I had to rent them from the store. So to me, like when I watch this Royal Rumble, I have feelings. I know other people have feelings like, oh, this is my first one, so I love it. But then when you watch this without that context to it at all, it's completely different than your superstars. You don't have Andre or Demolition or Warrior or things like that. No, you have Papa Shango at number 3. And I love Papa Shango as a character. But yet, is he the star power that we're used to the year before with Jake and Piper? No.
No, exactly. And that was like basically a run-in. He comes in. Yeah, and then gets taken out by Flair in a matter, I don't know, was he in there 3 minutes? Not even.
No, 28 seconds. He's in there for 28 seconds.
Yeah. I was talking about the time it took him from the arena.
Oh.
He was backstage because it was that quick. So let's just say the thought process behind it just, I think, was lacking. The plan here to try and entertain wasn't at the forefront, let's say.
No. And I think also some of these characters made their debuts like just a little while before this pay-per-view or a little bit in the tail end of 92. So when you're seeing some of these names pop up, you're like, when did this person show up? Because they're not on the Survivor Series 92 or they're not in SummerSlam 92. They just appear. But some of these obviously are mainstays. This is the $1 Million Man's last Royal Rumble. He's at number 4. Then I'm going to try to go off the list really quick just so people can understand who's in this. 5, Brian Knobbs. 6, Virgil. So we know all those names with the Golden Era names. 7, Jerry Lawler. He recently came into the WWE and he's still the king. And that's his gimmick.
Was this the pooping incident too?
Excuse me?
The crown?
This is the event they pooped in his crown?
I think this is the one with before he came out. I think he comes out without a crown on.
You were right.
And that's another story.
Excuse me. Let's tell it then. So what happened to Jerry Lawler's crown?
Yeah, Lawler's entrance into the WWE was not really welcomed by a lot of guys. He was not well liked by a lot of people, simply because of as a promoter, along with the Jarretts, and they didn't do extensively long runs with their organizations for a lot of people, and so they would. But I think that a lot of guys felt that they were, misused and abused, and they had a reputation for just being awful paydays. So when he ends up coming to the WWE, it's like, really, now you got to come to us. You got to come to the big leagues now, and I think they sent a pretty clear and smelly message that they weren't happy with his arrival. And the story goes that I don't know, there's been rumors. I probably shouldn't name superstars because I don't know for sure, but I know that there were like people watching the door to make sure that Lawler didn't come in while this defecation was happening. And it was more than one.
Wow.
And needless to say, the crown was really not in any kind of shape to wear that evening. So the story goes that he actually went to Vince afterwards and said, look, if this is something that's going to occur, and it wasn't like he was calling these guys out necessarily, but saying, I don't have to be here. And Vince assured him, no, we want you here, and put the word out that there'll be no more. From now on, the boys will use toilets, not crowns.
I want to see like the memo. Randomly wrestlers come out with memos lately, and it's like, dear WWE superstars, no more pooping in crowns, only toilets. Have a great day. Like,
yes, enough said.
Yeah, wow, no more pooping. That's crazy.
So yeah, a little side note, but that wasn't unusual. And you, if you knew at the time, you know, a lot of these guys that ended up getting to the WWF were it had gone. You know, you in your journey, you would have passed through that promotion,
Of course,
you know, for sure. And for many, it wasn't a pleasant experience. You know, it was a necessary part of their the way they went to, you know, to be able to get to the level that they did. But at the same time, you know, you can imagine a lot of these promoters, and they were out to make money, and a lot of them, you know, some were reputable, others weren't. For many, it was just business, and they chewed people and spit them out. And many felt that that way about Lawler. That you know, although he was a very successful promoter, he didn't, in their eyes, treat them well.
Yeah, there's a story of like Stone Cold Steve Austin opening up an envelope of money, and I think it's Jerry Jarrett who walks by him. He's like, "Hey, ain't gonna get much bigger, kid." And then
Yeah.
like you hear about promoters being dicks to wrestlers, then you never think, "Oh, I'm the promoter. I'll be in business forever." Well, when your business goes out, where do you go? You go where all the people you screwed over.
Eventually, karma rears its ugly head.
And here we are, Jerry Lawler, no crown, just poop.
But it all worked out pretty damn well for Jerry.
Oh my God, what a career! He lasted longer than so many people that you thought would last.
Yeah, no kidding. And you know, on the other side, on the mic, you know, that was a whole other career. Just like for, you know, Bobby Heenan and others that really made that successful transition. And there's probably a lot of professional wrestlers out there that I mean, a lot of fans of professional wrestling out there that didn't really know anything about Jerry Lawler as the wrestler. They know him as the announcer, and you know, but they don't know about, you know, all he did before that, and
well, Andy Kaufman,
what he did for a lot of you know. We should say, as much as there were, you know, a lot of people that didn't like him because of the way they felt that they were treated when they were working for him, or there are many, many others that, you know, say they owe their career to him, that he was somebody who pushed them when nobody else wanted to, and brought them in when nobody else wanted to. So I'm sure there's several different sides to it, but there were many, though, I do know that weren't pleased at all that he was showing up and then was the king.
Yeah, he's like the king of wrestling, and he shows up in the WWF around this time. And honestly, for me as a fan watching this, I was like, who? Like Bob, like, the people who really jumped out at me is like, what are you doing here? When I was first watching this, was Bob Backlund in Jerry Lawler. As a kid watching this, you're like, what's my dad's friends doing here? Like you're looking for, you know, you're looking for your superstars. You're looking for your tugboats. You're looking for your hacksaws. I'm not looking for a Jerry Lawler. Like, I'm sorry. He looked out of place for me as only a WWF fan at the time. So, like, Max Moon, number 8, I don't know why, but he spoke to me, not Jerry Lawler. But Max Moon was another gimmick where, are you a man from space? Are you an astronaut? You shoot fireworks out of your hands? Do you?
And the gimmicks were out of control too. Okay, and I interrupted your list because I want to hear the rest of it. I'm sure folks do too, because it'll bring it back and go, how many times you're going to go, oh wow, I think I heard of that guy.
Yeah, number 8.
So we're at Lawler.
Yeah, so we have Jerry Lawler 7, 8 is Max Moon, 9 is Tenryu, who, if you remember from WrestleMania 7, he was in a tag team match against Demolition. Number 10, Mr. Perfect, who's back in the ring, who's a baby face, recently turned in 92. 11, Skinner, the Alligator Man. 12, Coco Beware. 13, Samu, one half of the Head Shrinkers, who recently came in. 14, Berserker. 15, Undertaker. 16, it's not the Red Rooster, it's Terry Taylor. 17, Damian Demento. 18, we're going to get to him. 18, IRS. 19, Tatanka. 20, Jerry Sags. 21, Typhoon. 22, Fatu, one half of the Head Shrinkers. 23, Earthquake. 24, Young Buck, Carlos Colón. 25, Tito Santana. 26, Rick Martel. The winner at 27, Yokozuna. 28, Owen Hart. 29, Repo Man. And 30, Macho Man Randy Savage. So let's back up. Max Moon.
Yeah.
A lot of gimmicks, as you brought up. And we even talked about it on the podcast.
And bad gimmicks.
The first Monday Night Raw, what you were a part of, he fights Shawn Michaels for the Intercontinental title, and he shoots a firework and hits a cameraman right in the chest. And that cameraman just like, oh, I'm not on fire? He pops back up, keeps filming, got to keep filming. What were your thoughts on Max Moon?
Besides part of his last name, I like. Really, not a whole lot. I know he was, a good hand, as they say, but at this time, we got these guys coming in, and not only are they not really well known, and maybe it was a good opportunity for a lot of them. It was, if you think about it, that where we were in history here, that it should have been a really great time for people like that to come up and maybe make a mark for themselves. But there are reasons that never really happened for a lot of these guys. They didn't have it.
Yeah.
And this was the not it lineup for many of these guys. And you hate to say that because these are guys that paid their dues.
Of course.
They certainly, and I've said many times that you don't end up in the WWF unless you are top tier. That that you work well, that you are you're a very good professional wrestler. It's just not going to happen. But at the same time, and you saw it, year after year after year, where you would get guys that would come in, and pretty much you knew once they were there, it just was not going to happen. But there's also the ones that would emerge. That list is long too. You talk about Steve Austin. Steve Austin was going nowhere. Dwayne Johnson was not when he arrived. It was the same thing. So I probably when you bring these guys in, and you could say, you have this instinct that these guys had. Some people like Pat Patterson and Vince, of course, and other people that were involved in management. But others, though, I think you're trying to put that round peg in the square hole. It just isn't going to happen. And this was the Dementos and even some of the gimmicks. I know like a lot of people like Papa Shango, but was that ever going to be more than a mid card, really?
Right.
For Ron Simmons, it just. So it was just like on and on. It was like a parade of that, and I just think it was like the frustration. And Chris Chambers has mentioned, that when he came in here, and this is about the time that he got there, and he just remembered it was the gimmick parade, the awful gimmick parade is what it was, and everybody was
Oh, it gets worse.
Berserker, and just comic, cartoonish, where it was still trying that whole family entertainment thing going, and it was tired, and you couldn't take this machine to the shop and fix it up and think it was going to keep running down the highway. It just was not happening.
No.
And this is what we see. You go through that whole list, and people listening to that are going, wow, I can't believe it. I mean, maybe 6 or 7 names stand out.
Yeah.
Perfect, Randy. But other than that, like, really?
Yeah. So we rattle off all those names, but while also in the Royal Rumble, we get a debut of a wrestler who's not officially in the Rumble. It's the Giant Gonzalez. In his his giant body looks about right, people were tall, so that works. But yet he's got an airbrushed suit on with muscles and fur. Dude, Like Warrior did this a year ago when he had steroid issues. It's like, oh well, if I can't have steroids, I'll wear a fake suit that looks like I have muscles. Giant Gonzalez, they did the whole fucking body with him. Like what?
Yeah.
What are we doing here, Mooney?
Oh my God. All Giant Gonzalez had was giant. He was a giant. That was the biggest issue with people that large is gravity. They just when you have that much pulling you back to earth every second of your life, you don't move real well. And I've told the story before of Alfred talking about Andre as a young kid and how well he could move with the size that he was. I don't think that ever was the case. I don't think that anyone would have ever accused Giant Gonzalez of being an athlete. Maybe in his the younger days, but how old was he here? He wasn't that old.
No.
And, just seeing him walk was kind of a clue that there wasn't a whole lot of athleticism. If you have problems, just really, not your gait is weird. Everything else you're going to do is probably not going to be real athletic. So you become very limited in what you can do with them. And I know that Mark Calloway, who had the unfortunate situation of having to work with him quite a bit, that he still talks about was like one of the most difficult periods of his career because of just how limited they were when they worked together, of how much they could do. And it was really tough to put him over. It wasn't like something taking him over the top rope onto the floor or something. That was a situation where he could get really hurt and then he can't work. So you got to protect him. And so, he was nowhere near on a level of Andre the Giant. Even Andre in his older, part of his career could still move better than that guy. And, so I think that was a disaster from the beginning. And then they made him look so buffoonish with that ridiculous suit and the fake fur.
Yeah.
Like, it looked, that suit was ridiculous when you saw it in person, and on television it must have looked worse because it just looked so fake. You
can see the zipper. I can see the zipper in the back.
Zipper, but the fake fur, it wasn't even. I don't know. It was all the way around. It was bad, and I felt for Taker that that he had to work with this guy, and I'm sure he learned some valuable lessons during that. How to
protect yourself,
turn a match into really nothing and to make it work, because he did. But I would totally understand him saying, that how difficult it was to work with that guy. I think every time I've seen in interviews, and when they mentioned Giant Gonzalez, you would see Mark's like, oh man, just brings back the memories of PTSD.
Yeah, I can imagine why. Again, as a child, when I watched it, I didn't really notice how terrible he was. And then years later, you go back and watch WrestleMania 9, and he's supposed to be this violent killer. He's controlled by Harvey Whippleman, who's getting revenge of what Taker did to Kamala a year before. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah. And then you watch this as an adult, and you're like, why is Giant Gonzalez using chloroform to take out Undertaker at WrestleMania 9? Isn't he a beast? Like, he shouldn't have these thoughts of going to the store and buying chloroform in a rag and then showing up in Las Vegas to choke him out with it. Like, that's one of the things I'll harp on my entire life. When you're a monster and you're supposed to be a savage, it makes no sense if you have a thought process of how you're going to beat someone. Like, eat them or like beat them down. Not, I'm going to take this, put it in there, cover your mouth. I hated him as an adult. As a kid,
and it doesn't. Right, it has to make some sense to you. Why would that person be doing this? And I think even in this match, he goes and the giant, and he's like working on the Undertaker's leg. Like, why would a giant have him do that? He would just
slobber you,
right? So, a lot of it didn't make sense. And that was just another part of the spectacle. That's just pretty much what it was. You know, you wanted to see, you'd see this gigantic human, and that was about the extent of it.
Yeah, he was impressive for taking out, like, if you're looking at a storyline standpoint, Giant Gonzalez taking out the Undertaker, it's like, whoa, like, this guy is bigger than Taker, he's taller than him, he's stronger than him. That to me, for storyline wise, completely makes sense visually. But yeah, as you watch this with different colored, you know, with your eyes being like, this is not that good. But no. But you know, that's him. And then also in this match, the Royal Rumble itself. So you have some characters we recognize, obviously, but then we get to Terry Taylor. He's no longer the Red Rooster. He's just a guy in red trunks wrestling. Like, we're in a world of Max Moons and Giant Gonzalez's. I don't think we're going to do very well with a technical wrestler right now.
Yeah, and it's also, you know, they're filling the roster. I mean, in a sense, just that we need bodies.
Right.
It just shows you what they were, and really not take anything away from Terry Taylor, because he was a very good technical wrestler, and was very popular when he worked in these other organizations and down south. But it never happened. And a lot of people will say, you know, it was the Red Rooster gimmick, you know, that made one of the worst ever. Another one of those. But I just think he was another example of just not having it, that for what people wanted in the World Wrestling Federation. It just never happened for him. And it's one of those kind of unexplained. Maybe if he had a better gimmick, I don't know, because, you know, he was, very good in the ring. But at this time, though, and like just another clear example, we just got to get somebody else in there, and just that's all there was to it, you know. Like, send him, you know.
We got any warm bodies back here? All right, send him up.
Yeah.
Terry Taylor had a.
I'm surprised some of the agents didn't have to, you know,
Pat
suit
Patterson
up.
and Jerry Briscoe up there.
Blackjack.
Lanza. Chief J Strombone's back there, right? All right, let's get him out there. Like, there's plenty of hands. Yeah. We got Carlos Colón out here. Why can't we get Chief J Strombone? You know?
No kidding.
That to me was one of the craziest things.
Rene Goulet, I think, was back there too, still. So, you know, like,
he's hanging out. Bob Costas is not upset with the WWE at the time, so he'll probably be there backstage. Carlos Colón, though, I don't understand this one, because even when you see the breakdown of the Royal Rumble and you do like the pre-shows and you're showing all the athletes, they don't use a current picture of Carlos Colón. It looks like a black and white photo of him from forever ago. Like, he's not young, he's not in shape. I don't understand who's buying a ticket to see this.
Yeah. That's another thing. It was just filling up this roster. Like, it was, you know, we have to get this many guys, and we don't have them. So let's try and create a little spectacle, and people that want to see some surprise names out there. And yeah, Carlos Colón, like, okay, wow. What does that from that? Was that an old passport picture? I'm not quite sure what that was.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. But you know, that's what it just seemed like, that they just had to fill this roster up. And wow, it's not great.
No, and when every year they have Royal Rumbles, and every year, you know, you have Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, everyone's sharing their favorite Royal Rumble moments. This Royal Rumble, this whole entire event, usually only has one thing people bring up. And that's Yokozuna winning the Royal Rumble at number 27. That's great. But the biggest thing people talk about is the Macho Man Randy Savage dropping an elbow on Yokozuna in the Rumble match. They're the final two. He goes for a pinfall. Macho Man is trying to pin Yokozuna. Yoko just lifts him up like this, flies over the top rope. Yokozuna wins the match. So let's talk about those two fun things. Why would Macho Man ever go for a pinfall in a Royal Rumble? Is it just for that spot for Yoko to push up and throw him over the top?
Yeah. Well, Randy certainly wasn't going to do that. When you got a guy that weighs I don't know what Yoko was then.
Like 505 pounds.
Yeah, I don't know if he was
said.
at 600 yet, but yeah. That I remember thinking the same thing. That makes no sense. What do they give him the 3 counts? Okay, so now we just get up and keep going
I don't know.
because we're still in the ring.
It made no sense. Going for a pinfall in a Royal Rumble, like you're not a Damian Demento, Macho Man. You are a former WWF 2-time champion. You should have a little sense of what's happening in this match. You've been in a couple.
Yeah, maybe there was this a stipulation Jack Tunney added at the last minute?
He's like, he only told Randy, like, Randy, if you go for a pinfall, I'll pretend to count it for you. Don't worry. Yeah, there's no referee involved in counting either, too. So it's like he just goes for a pin, and then that's it. And then Macho Man he gets thrown out of the ring by Yoko, and Yoko is the Royal Rumble winner. But that's
I wonder if anybody brought that up when they're talking about what they're going to do. And then you're going to throw him right over the side. After he tries to pin him, okay, I guess.
Right, because we've talked about before, like these Royal Rumbles, some of these spots are planned out so we can make sure, all right, this person comes down, then you get tossed out. Here, someone must have, I hope, convinced Macho Man, like, go for a pin. Yeah, go for a pin. So when Yoko's laying down, he can just push up and you'll fly over the top rope and make Yokozuna look even crazier. It's like, okay, but why am I going for a pinfall though? Like, oh, that part doesn't matter. No one will bring it up 30 years later.
Yeah. We just wanted to see you throw that elbow and we should mention with Yoko that that was kind of the fact that he pulls that move off, though. He was really, really good in the ring as far as you talk about being athletic and a big man, at least wide, the girth that he had. Can you imagine that, carrying around almost 600 pounds?
And traveling.
That guy could move in the ring. It was just astounding to watch. As much as Gonzalez, Giant Gonzalez couldn't do, Yoko could. He was incredibly flexible and quick. You saw some of the stuff that he would move in that ring. And I could never help but wonder if that guy dropped, I don't know, 300 pounds, even 200 pounds or something, what a difference that would have made. Was it the spectacle that he was that large and that's what made him so popular? I don't know. I think that he would have been successful anyway. But and I know that that they really wanted him to lose weight. It wasn't like keep it going, keep going but he just loved food too much. And didn't have any desire to stop.
Right.
I know that they, when they wanted to send him to back then, I think they had like fat camps, and that never worked. So, but I always used to think about that. God, if that guy was normal sized, just if he was 250 or 300, my God, man, he would have been incredible. I'm sure he would have been doing stuff off the top turnbuckle, flips and everything else. Okay. But when you have that much weight, oh my, that was just incredible. But he was really something. It was great. It was just amazing to watch him and what he could do.
Well, he's only 26 years old here too. So he wins Royal Rumble at 26. You got Bob Backlund, who's 43 in this Rumble. But Yokozuna picks up, and this Royal Rumble is the first ever Royal Rumble to offer the winner something. Over the past years, 92, yes, Ric Flair won the world title because they just did that for that one time. Every other time, win the Rumble, good for you. This time, if you win the Royal Rumble, you're guaranteed a world championship match at WrestleMania. So finally, they created this road to WrestleMania with the Royal Rumble. Like, let's talk about that for a second, because that's genius to finally give a reasoning of why are you even fighting in this Royal Rumble in the first place.
Yeah, and something that stands to this day, and it survived all these years. And it was. There was always, I guess, in tournaments or something, and then you could say, I'm the winner. Right. But it really was kind of pointless prior to that. Okay, get back on the road. This did have something to it, and a big prize for the opportunity to challenge for the championship at WrestleMania, no less. Wasn't just some pay-per-view. It was the crown jewel. And it really did add a great dimension to this, which it really needed, as we know, this event. But it's great that it kept going. I really thought that was a great addition.
You brought it up too. I wonder if the reasoning they even created that stipulation was to give this Royal Rumble some extra star power, because the wrestlers aren't going to certainly bring it. So what if we offer a prize at the end, so it makes you more incentive to watch this or buy it? Because I don't want to say I don't like this Royal Rumble, but when you read off the names, they scream superstar to you. They seem like the bottom tier of what's left of the superstars from the golden era. And then you have a couple, stars here and there, but the star power is lacking, and maybe this stipulation added to that.
Well, and also even with the star power, what they were doing with those stars, they have Kurt as a babyface, which I never thought was, that didn't work for him. I mean, and especially with the Mr. Perfect gimmick.
Right, you're supposed to be this cocky guy saying everything.
And so, what they were doing with, Randy and everybody was just lost. I just think it was a period of time booking wise. They didn't know what the hell they were doing. And as Chris Chambers mentioned before, remember that they had that meeting, and eventually Vince is admitting, I don't know where we're going here. I need help. So, it was the creative was really depleted. You had all these guys. It just was not a good time all the way around.
No, this is also the last ever WWF pay-per-view where Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon call it together.
Yeah.
That is truly a sad moment for wrestling fans, because WrestleMania 9, Bobby's out there, but Gorilla's backstage in a toga. SummerSlam, it's Bobby and it's Vince. Survivor Series, same scenario. Like, no longer do we get this amazing group of characters together. What were your thoughts? We've talked about it before, but what are your thoughts on this being the last time that Bobby and Gorilla are together on pay-per-view?
Oh, it's incredibly sad to even listen to it, and with that knowledge, and you keep hanging on to everything they're saying, because this is a magical team that's never gonna happen again.
Yeah.
And they were so good together, and it went so far beyond that. The two developed a relationship with each other. They truly loved each other, and we talked about this before. That that final scene when Bobby gets not this event, but when he makes his exit
on Raw, and Gorilla Monsoon tosses him out of the arena.
Yeah. And apparently, it was Bobby's idea that this is what he wanted to do. And folks, if you didn't catch it, that's where, Gorilla's had enough, and he literally throws Bobby out of the arena and then throws his bag after him. And I watch that. I get emotional just, watching that, because it's just so sad when you know everything that happened after that. And even when it was going on, there was this finality, I think is the best way to put it, of that not only were they over, was that magical duo over. It was that, especially for people that that love the stuff that we love to talk about.
Yeah.
It was kind of just slamming the door on it and saying, that's it. And that shot of Bobby walking off, and you're just like, wow, that's it. That just signified everything. It wasn't even so much the end of that team, of that relationship that we would be able to see and share, but it was everything. And that's truly, that's was it. And I always wondered if I don't know if Bobby ever regretted that exit the way it was. I don't know. Maybe it was perfect. Maybe it was just the way it should be. But it for me, for people like me, and there are other teams that I liked, but they represented really the golden era to me. And I know that they didn't even get together till we were pretty well into it, to where they were this announced team. But that for me was really the end of it. And it wasn't ever the same. And we had the next generation, and then of course the Attitude Era. But those two really kind of summed it up for me. And that scene, if you want to watch, you watch it, go back and look back at it, I think you'll feel the same way. I'd love to hear comments from people about that.
Yeah. It's the way you describe the ending of Bobby and Gorilla. It reminds me of, I don't know why, of like the Muppet Show. What if Statler and Waldorf, the guys who sit up in the balcony, one day one's still there and one's gone, and you're like, what? Do I like you by yourself?
Something's missing.
Yeah, like I still like you, but like you're no longer the same. Gorilla Monsoon goes off to become the WWF president, taking over for Jack Tunney. He eventually, that's his new role in the company. Bobby goes off to WCW. And, money is a reasoning. It's the wrestling business. Bobby wants to work less dates, be paid more money.
Yeah.
And he had a neck injury as well. And so he couldn't go out there bumping around. That's why he just started doing commentary. So the story goes, though, is Bobby and Gorilla, they, went up to the hotel together and they said, all right, bye. And they just left. But then eventually they came back together and they cried and they had a wonderful night together. Bobby Heenan tells a story in one of his interviews he did. And so it's sad to think like, all right, well, I'll see you later. Bye-bye. Oh, wait, shit. We're never going to probably see each other like this anymore ever again because our lives are no longer on the same path. They come back. They cried. They hugged. They had a good time. So it's just sad to see this end.
Yeah, I could just see that, you'd love to reenact that scene of, they go and then they both at the same time come back and look into each other's eyes.
They're like, you're a gorilla.
But what's great about when you say that, Steve, is the fact that they both realized that, and all of Bobby's reasons made sense. Yeah. The timing of it with what was happening and whatever that vision was Vince had at the time, thinking we're going to get all these new blood and all this was necessary. But, Bobby wasn't the only one, but I'm sure that he talked about it, that whole experience was awful for him. It was never the same. And it really did, I think, become a job for him and get through it. He got paid. I'm sure he got to spend a lot more time at home with his daughter. He was, loved his kid and being closer to home. And we all know how brutal life on the road was. But as far as being happy in his job and what he was doing, there's no question. I mean, the best time of his life was when he was, managing three different characters, three different superstars, and sitting next to Gorilla Monsoon. I mean, how does it possibly get any better than that?
No, you can't. You have the Heenan family running amok, beating up everybody, and you get to hang out with your best friend Gorilla on television on prime time.
Oh my God! And those shoots that they used to do. Where they would take them on location.
Oh my God.
And I remember the one they were out in Los Angeles and they went and shot an episode of Primetime on location. They rented a boat and they go out and they've got them in chairs. And I think the sea gets a little rough and Gorilla's in this chair and he's like, this giant Gorilla Monsoon, and the chair is like sliding on the deck, and he's giggling, that, and they had a blast. You could just see the chemistry between those two, and the jokes from Bobby, and he could make Gino laugh. it was, like everything else, everything has to end. But my God, that period of time in their lives, and for we all benefited by it, and it was really, when you think about it, it was short lived. How many years was it?
Yeah.
But man, were they entertaining, and it's sad to think that this was the last pay per view, and because it wasn't a great event. It wasn't the way they should have gone out.
Mm. Yeah, a year ago was their hit. If we're talking about bands and writing songs, the number one song of Bobby and Gorilla is Royal Rumble '92. I still like your other songs you wrote together, like '93 Royal Rumble, but
that album was okay.
That album was okay, following up your major hit, but '92 Rumble is the greatest. Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon back and forth for 3 hours straight. Like, if you've never watched that event, I don't care what year you started watching wrestling, just listen to the commentary. Yeah. And you will laugh and have a good time. So, but yeah, it's a transitional year. So we're no more Bobby and Gorilla doing commentary here. This is also the big moment for Bret the Hitman Hart, because we don't have this, will Hogan come back? At least at this time, we don't know that. We have no Warrior. Savage is in the Rumble. He's doing commentary from Monday Night Raw. So this is Bret Hart. This is Bret Hart. It is big coming out show. Him and Michaels had a main event at Survivor Series 92. Yeah, but this is his first ever, hey, you are the guy. We believe in you. Let's see what we can do here. But we've talked about it before. Do you think Vince McMahon ever really believed in Bret Hart? Or he was like, I need you to hold this world title for a little bit while I figure some things out?
I think it was a little of both. I think that Vince had tremendous respect for Bret and, of course, his lineage. Mm. And I think it was a little of both. I think he wanted him to really succeed, but it was always about the numbers, and it wasn't Bret's fault. I don't think at the time necessarily. Certainly he had something to do with it, but also it was what was going on with the business. Mm-hmm. It was hard to do business. To really. Bring people in, get them in the seats. It was downtime all the way around. And then you had all these other factors going on and distractions. So but I think that when he made that, lifetime deal, I think that, Vince was hoping he could follow through with it. But as we learn, business is business. It always, when it comes down to it, that's what it is for Vince McMahon. And it always seemed like, Bret got screwed.
Every moment.
It all came down to it. And so many different examples. People wonder why he's still bitter in many ways. Well, hell, just look at what he's been through in his life. And as you know, he's one of my all-time top 5. He's on my Mount Rushmore as far as what he could do in the ring, the performer he was, and just like the person of what he gave and sacrificed for the business and all the things that he endured with his family. So, but I think they saw they weren't going to get there with Bret. So, and if I think Vince felt like he could make some really good money down there, then eventually when he let him go. Yeah. But I think at this time, they were trying to see if he could do that for them.
I always love Bret. Like, Bret Hart is one of those wrestlers who still gets a lot of credit, but I don't think he gets enough credit. When we bring up Mount Rushmores, I don't know why people leave Bret Hart off of it. It's always, Steve Austin, Hulk Hogan, and then Ric Flair, Undertaker, probably, depending on what time frame you're talking about. But Bret always gets left off. It wasn't him who had a bad run too. Shawn Michaels, Diesel. These guys were world champions when business was not doing well, but no one really puts it on Shawn Michaels ever. They're always like, oh, Bret and Diesel, man. Like, they it's like, what about Shawn Michaels? I love Shawn Michaels, my favorite wrestler of all time. But he also had not a bad run, but had a bad ratings slump for a long time. So I don't know why. Drop it on.
Well, really, until he came back.
Austin. Yeah. 97, 98.
Yeah.
So from 93 to around 98, business is all over the place and both companies. So it's not just one or the other. But Bret Hart defeated Razor Ramon here. Razor Ramon's only been around for about 6 months. And so he gets a world title shot, unlike before.
Isn't it amazing, though, Steve, how, he hadn't been around long and how over that character already was.
Unbelievable.
Razor, Ramon,
Ramon?
That was all Scott Hall. And he, really designed that whole character. Like Bruce talks about how Vince didn't even know who Scarface was. He'd never seen the movie. And he had to, put it over. But that was one of those gimmicks that you're like, wow, right away he was over. And I do credit also, the vignettes and stuff they did, at that time to get people over. But you never knew. But that one, man, and Scott was great in the ring too. That certainly helped.
That's true too, and he was tall, so that's it. Kind of adds on to everything. Like, oh, you're a big man, and you're actually good at wrestling. Oh, and you can talk. Like, he was, as we kind of gave a little indication of how the new roster's doing. You have Max Moon, but you will have Razor Ramon, who you're like, oh, this is perfect. Like, we got one. Like, we got a hit, folks. So they read that and they rode that into the sun. He becomes Intercontinental Champion just a few months after this. So they obviously had plans for Razor Ramon after this outing. But it's a good match. But also the debut, as Bobby Heenan would say it, the Narcissist. It's Lex Luger with all of his mirrors and his tinfoil jacket he wears. He makes his debut here. A year ago at WrestleMania 8, we saw his debut when he was going to be the face of WBF, the World Body League Federation. And he was much bigger, much more jacked. Maybe something's changed in his body regimen. I'm not sure. But now here he is, still looking good, but not as big. So what'd you think of this? Because I was not a fan.
Well, yeah. And if you think about it, the Narcissist was kind of like a Mr. Perfect character.
Yes.
And the difference between them, and not taking anything away from Lex as far as, but that, Kurt Hennig could pull that off, that arrogance and that presence and that, smarmy and smirking kind of, character. It always seemed to me that, Lex was just a little lost in it. Like, he didn't get it, like, what am I supposed to be, or what am I supposed to do here? And I don't think that they ever really gave him the direction, whether or not he would have pulled it off or not. But it just, okay, you got a guy who likes to look at himself.
We have Shawn Michaels.
That's right.
We have Mr. Perfect, who thinks he's great.
Yeah. And you liked his entrance because they're going to see these women in bikinis. So what's wrong with that? But then there's got to be something to it. So, it didn't, as much as Bobby couldn't say the name, that's about as much how worth that character was when it came down to it, because I don't think it was ever really defined. It was just, okay, you got a guy who's into himself.
Yeah. Okay. Super. Yeah. It's funny because, I'm at this age watching this and I'm like, oh, Johnny Gonzalez, I'm all in. Max Moon, you got it. Lex Luger, the Narcissist, boring. So that's where my mind was at as a child. And also, I didn't watch anything else. So I didn't know Lex Luger was already, say in WCW, NWA. I didn't know Giant Gonzalez was Elegante from WCW. Like, I didn't know Mean Mark was Undertaker. Like, these little things that some people knew because you were older or you had more channels. I had no idea. So this is my first time seeing him. And I was like, I remember you a year ago drinking milk at WrestleMania 8 with Bobby and Gorilla. This is, I'm not interested.
Well, that was, and the thing was about the WWF is the fact that, it was everywhere. These other guys would come in, it was easy for them to come in and establish them as characters because nobody had ever seen them on television before, unless you lived in that area, unless you lived down south, you lived in Atlanta or somewhere in those areas. So, it was easy to bring people in and basically start them from scratch. People didn't come in and they go, oh, he's Lex Luger. I know. Right. I remember him I saw him last week on another channel before WCW started getting, the attention it did. but they could do that, and that was advantageous for these guys because as we told the story before, then you have characters that are so well known or established, they can't be anything else. So
it reminds me of like Moondog trying to be a Demolition, and then they were calling out his name, being like, "Oh, I know who you are. You're a Moondog," and oh shit, and then that's how you give our actual Demolition we love.
But there's something, it's crazy because some people could pull it off where you had maybe because of the heavy face paint and everything else, but you have somebody like Barry Darsow who could become the Repo Man.
Yeah.
So and just basically after a brief break, you come back and everybody knows that's Smash.
I didn't know,
but they went with it. It wasn't like it was way over, but they accepted it. They weren't chanting, Demolition when he came into the ring. Smash. Yeah.
Hey, everybody, it's Smash.
So it's funny how that works. It really is. That some people they're married to a character and there's not a damn thing they can do about it. It's stuck with you forever. And others, they could change. They could be somebody else. And okay.
Well, by July, Lex Luger is no longer the narcissist. He loves America, and he wants to body slam Yokozuna on the Intrepid. So things change, obviously, because they realized it didn't work. You're talking about people I didn't recognize either. Lex Luger, didn't know who he was. Steiner brothers come in. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know who they were either. And to me, again, no one get upset. They didn't fit in with the WWF because they were just really good wrestlers. We were used to bushwhackers biting your ass. We were used to spikes on your shoulders, face paint. They didn't fit in for me. What'd you think? Yeah. Because they belonged in a couple years ago in the WWF, not now.
Yeah, and that's the way they sold them too. That they were legit, shoot wrestlers kind of gimmick. That they were college, out of the college ranks. They had the Letterman jacket,
the things on their heads. Yeah. So I don't think people are like, well, okay. But I think that they had this reputation. They worked pretty damn stiff. And you talk about the Nasty Boys that they talk about some of the matches, that they had down south where they were, that was pretty much accepted. You had to go out there and bang. And, Brian Knobs talks about the crazy matches they would have and slinging chairs and, full force into your head and backs. And so, people in the WWF weren't used to seeing that, the audience wasn't. And so, they did well, but I agree with you saying that, coming in like that and you're thinking, what in the world? Who are these guys? Yeah, we're not used to that.
And it's supposed to be kind of this legit shoot wrestling, and like, I don't. College wrestling was boring to me. It's the guys like wrestling on the ground,
right.
So that was a tough sell. But the fact that they were so brutal, I think, is what turned it around because people did like to see that. That was that touch of that ECW.
Yeah, they were good. I liked them, but honestly, when you only highlight one tag team, this is like the death of the tag team division. The new generation does not have what the golden era had. Even the Attitude Era fixes the tag team division, but new generation, we get stuck with like one babyface team, one heel team, and then there's random people on the bottom. And Steiner Brothers.
Isn't that amazing though to think about? Because at one time, how many tag teams they had?
It was like
in the WWF
Series match where we had 10 teams on one side, 10 teams on another.
Yeah.
And they were all good.
Yeah, and it's just amazing then how quickly that all changed, that we had all these great tag teams.
Is it money though, do you think? You have to pay two wrestlers instead of having to pay one wrestler?
Or I think that it kind of had its run.
Okay.
With people, that they still enjoyed tag teams, but it wasn't, quite the era that we saw, quite that span of time. And these guys were really good. Every one of those tag teams, you just go down the list, and even ones that, like something like Strike Force or something like that, which were, top tier as far as card stuff. But they were those matches that they had were always, all those guys that were involved in those teams were really good wrestlers, and they were good tag team wrestlers,
and they were over too.
Yes, and it's crazy to think about, but that was really kind of the tag team era. You've never seen that again,
no.
And now it's almost like it's a a rarity that you even see people really teaming up and staying together for a long period of time, like we did back then.
Yeah, tag team division in today's world is, again, dead. No matter what anyone's like, oh no, we have this amount. It doesn't matter how many you have. Does anyone care about seeing them? Are anyone buying the shirts? Is anyone paying to see them? When we had 3 loops of house shows, tag teams used to main event one of those loops because they were so popular. Now, I can't. If it was a tag team main event, it wouldn't be your tag teams. It'd be like Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes versus 2 other singles wrestlers. That's what you get, not team name versus team name. So. It's Steiner Brothers, though, beat the Beverly Brothers here, and the Steiner Brothers had a decent run, and again, they leave towards the end of the year because, just like anything, money talks, and they weren't making the money that they were promised, and so they have an okay run. We'll probably do a podcast on them eventually, but they're decent here. Speaking of another tag team that broke up a year ago, Shawn Michaels, the Intercontinental Champion, defeats Marty Jannetty. We would have got this match a year ago, but Marty got in trouble at a club bringing cocaine, and so he got arrested in trouble, and he got brought back, and the whole storyline is he returns, and he grabs the giant mirror that Shawn Michaels was looking at himself in the face, and he goes to smash Shawn Michaels, but Sherry, she gets in the way, she gets the glass smashed over her head, and that's kind of the end of her run as well. She eventually gets fired in 93, which, again, unfortunate. Marty, Shawn Michaels, are we just a year too late?
Yeah, but if you hear Marty talk about this match that they had, and a lot of these because they had so many house shows that you could go and you could work on a match before you had it at a pay-per-view, and this was a natural, the 2 of them together to have this collision. And the way he tells it is that, they had 3 house shows to work on this match before they were going to do the pay-per-view. And he said, man, we were just so in sync. It was so great that the last night, and I don't know if it was before the pay-per-view but it was, right at that time. It was the day before or whatever. But they had this match. It was a 20-minute match, and it was phenomenal. The 2 of them just going at it nonstop. And he said that they, both of them were in great shape. And he said they were both blown up when they got done. They were in the back and, laying on tables and just completely done. They'd left everything in the ring. And he says, that it's a good match because if you go backstage and the boys, first of all, watched it, and they're there and they're like giving you a standing O when you get back. And he said that's how good this match was. We had it down. The sync was just perfect, and they blew the roof off. And he says, that Jack Lanza, who was the agent, after all these matches, these guys would call in. That was one of their things that they would do, and they would just talk about what the match was like. And he said, reportedly, this match should be main event. This is so good. The 2 of them were so good, and every piece of it. And Marty says we had it down. It was just great. And then they get to the pay-per-view, and they bring him in, and they say, "Oh, we're going to bring Sherry in. We're going to have Sherry interject in the match." Well, Marty says, they're both kind of like, wait a minute. Now, if you'd worked on something like that, it could be anything else. Imagine that you'd rehearsed, and you had everything down and knew exactly what you're going to do. And then all of a sudden they say, no, we're going to do this. And at this point, she's going to do this. And at this point, she's going to come in with a shoe. She's going to try and hit Shawn. She's going to hit Marty, or, however.
Yeah.
And so it totally threw off all the timing of this match that they had. And he said it wasn't bad, but in his eyes, but it was not the match that they had been rehearsing, and it just fell flat. And he said, a lot of it they had to, make up as they went. Like they kind of ad lib, I guess you could call it, out there and so it's off sync. It may, they're good enough. They've done this long enough that they know how to cover, but it wasn't sharp like it was. And the way he tells us that when they went backstage, Vince pulled them in and told them, that was not good. I was very disappointed. And they're both like, whoa. And he said that he looks back at it and think, why didn't I say something like, well, you put Sherry in the match, you totally screwed it up. But he said they were just kind of like floored, and then it'd be like we're making excuses.
Right.
But he said in his eyes, the match was perfect. They had it. If they would have just let them do that, it would have been a great match. And who knows what the real story is, but Marty claims that Shawn threw him under the bus, saying he was drinking, told Vince that he was drinking, the night before, and Marty tells him no, it was Shawn who was doing things before, whoever knows, whatever the real story is.
Yeah.
But I do believe that that they took that match very seriously, and inserting the day of and this whole new element with Sherry in it could totally throw that match off. So it wasn't very good what it came down to.
Right.
And shortly after that, I think Marty was fired after that.
Yeah, eventually Marty gets the Intercontinental title, and then Shawn Michaels gets it back, and then Marty's out of the company again.
Yeah, and really, I mean, he was his own worst enemy. You can't, the opportunities that he had, and what we go on all day about what might have been, but that was Marty. He couldn't live any other way.
No, and he gets brought back a bunch of times, and something else happens.
Perfect got him back in, if you remember, and
he's part of the New Rockers with Leif Cassidy, who's Al Snow. He gets brought back. He keeps getting brought back over and over and over again.
Yeah, he got opportunities. Right?
Yeah, opportunities over and over again. But yeah, it's a decent match. I guess it's not as great as it could have been. And the other match that happened was Bam Bam Bigelow defeating Big Boss Man. This is the end of the Big Boss Man in the WWF. Another golden era gone. And Bam Bam Bigelow becomes a major star, eventually main eventing WrestleMania. But this Royal Rumble, I think the most famous thing about this is Macho Man trying to pin someone in the Rumble, but also it becoming the first Royal Rumble where the winner is guaranteed a shot at a World Championship match at WrestleMania. Originally, it's the main event. As time goes on, we get 2 world titles, and personalities and egos get in the way. So sometimes when you win the Rumble, you don't actually get the main event WrestleMania, even though it's 2 nights now. So all in all, though, let's hear your true thoughts about the 1993 Royal Rumble, Mooney.
Well, I think, and I don't like to be negative about a lot of this stuff, but it was not one of the greatest pay-per-view events. It was kind of summing up where everything was going, as we mentioned. How many people were departing. It was a time. It was the end of an era, really, and WrestleMania 9 really, I think, put the period on it. But this was, as you said, all these guys were leaving. I was gone soon after, which changed the history of professional wrestling forever, as we know.
Of course. Well, think about you, Mean Gene, Bobby Heenan. Lord Alfred Hayes is still on TV, but you only hear his voice randomly. Grill Monsoon is now the president. Jesse Ventura has been gone for a long ass time. Like, you don't have the same talent. They just grab one person, make them do interviews, versus, we have personalities like Mooney, like Gene, like Bobby, like Gorilla, like Lord. Everything changes.
Well, and really, it's in seriousness here. That announce team overall was tremendous. Oh, it just and was never ever recreated. It really was, and she said there's not many of us left. I think it's Jesse and I, and well Vince, but it's just amazing that during that period, just how it all works so well together.
Mm-hmm.
And he said even the announce team that was it, really. And then all these other guys departing. So it was at the end of all this, and of course change would begin. It would take a long time, but it was all necessary. And a lot of great years were ahead for the WWE.
Yeah.
On a positive note.
On a positive note. Listen, I came in with New Generation, so I'm a New Generation kid too, but I also appreciate and I love the golden era of professional wrestling. But the 1983 Royal Rumble, you might love it, you might hate it. And I hope we gave both sides of the coin here on that event because, let's be honest, it wasn't that good. But anyways, thanks for watching here on the Golden Era Podcast with Sean Mooney. I'm Steve Fall. He's Sean Mooney. Have a wonderful day. And remember, if you try to pin someone in the Royal Rumble, don't do it. Have a great day. Bye-bye.